Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. In the village of Maribel, nestled between whispering pines and mist-wreathed hills, lived Alina Fenwood, a baker's daughter with a laugh as light as pastry sugar, but eyes that darted at every unexpected sound. For as long as she could remember, Alina had been haunted by a fear she could not name, an instinctive terror that in the dark something watched her, waiting. On the clearest mornings, she chased away the shadows with baking. Her warm hearth and fragrant loaves drove the darkness from her heart. But each twilight, the fear returned, stronger than before, clawing at her mind with silent whispers. Villagers whispered that she suffered from the nightquake, a rare malady of the soul, and no balm, no kindly word could lift the dread that lay coiled in her dreams. One autumn evening, as golden light stained the horizon, an unearthly stranger appeared at the bakery's door, a tall, hooded figure whose cloak shimmered with an inner glow. He carried a slender iron key, its surface alive with shifting runes. "You suffer a fear unspoken," the stranger intoned, voice like wind through dead leaves. "I bear the key of silent fears. It can free you if you choose." Alina's heart raced. The stranger spoke of an ancient order and a long-forgotten fortress buried beneath the Silver Peak Mountains. "But beware," he warned, "the key asks its price. To lock away your fear, you must be willing to surrender the memory that gave it birth." And with that, he was gone, leaving Alina clutching the cold, humming key as dusk fell. Tormented by hope and dread, Alina sought the counsel of old Marith, the village seer who dwelled near the river's bend. In Marith's dim hut, lit by a single lantern, Alina showed the key. Marith's ancient eyes widened. "This is no simple trinket," she breathed. "The night wardens forged it to safeguard sorrow too great to bear. If you lock away your fear, you will lose, at least temporarily, the memory that gave you strength. And should that memory fade completely, the key will vanish, taking you with it." She pressed a gnarled hand to Alina's. "To wield this key is to risk yourself. First, you must journey to the forgotten keep and face the trial of remembrance." With a trembling nod, Alina accepted her fate. Early next dawn, Alina set out for the Silver Peak Mountains. Word of her quest spread, and 3 souls volunteered to join her. Bram the huntsman, whose vengeance for a slaughtered brother had hollowed his heart. Lissa the scholar, driven by a fear of knowing too much and losing herself. And Garrick, a silent blacksmith haunted by the forge's fiery wrath. Each carried a fear they yearned to lock away. Together, the quartet journeyed through sun-glazed meadows and ancient forests where the trees themselves seemed to watch with gnarled curiosity. By the time the jagged spires of Silver Peak churned the sky, they had bonded over shared anxieties and hopes, forging a unity that would be tested by the trials to come. Beneath the mountain's foothills lay the forest of dread whispers, a grove where the wind stirred unseen leaves into murmuring confessions. As the companions passed, the trees heralded their deepest insecurities in shivering sighs. Bram's vengeance roared like a wild beast. Lissa's thirst for forbidden knowledge rattled like dry bones. And Garrick's fear of his own anger rumbled like distant thunder. Alina felt her own unnamed dread surge in response. Every step forward required them to speak aloud their fears, offering them to the sky in defiance. Bram confessed the emptiness of revenge. Lissa accepted that some truths must be faced, and Garrick vowed to master his anger rather than it mastering him. With each truth spoken, the whispers receded, and a narrow path of pale moss opened through the grove. At the forest's end stood the bridge of shattered memories, A crumbling stone span arched over a chasm of swirling mist. Below, vague shapes drifted, fragments of lives lost to time. To cross, each traveler had to relinquish a cherished memory in exchange for safe passage. Bram let go of the moment he heard his brother's last breath. Lissa of the first page of her beloved forbidden tome. Garrick of the roar of his first forged blade. And Alina, despite her deepest reluctance, surrendered the image of her mother's lullaby. The memories flickered in spectral form before dissolving into the mist. Each step across the bridge tested their resolve, but at the far end, they emerged changed. Their memories dimmed, but their hearts steadier. Beyond the bridge lay the forgotten keep, its blackened stones spiraling into the storm-racked heavens. In its highest chamber stood a great iron door, its surface inlaid with ghostly runes that matched the key's engravings. Under crackling lightning, Alina raised the key of silent fears. "This is your trial of remembrance," Mareth's warning echoed in her mind. Bram, Lissa, and Garrick formed a protective circle. Alina pressed the key into the lock. The runes flared, illuminating the chamber in a cold glow. A sudden scream filled the air, the sound of every fear long buried, clamoring for release. Alina felt her own despair rise in a tempest of terror. Summoning the last shreds of her resolve, she whispered, "I choose hope." The key turned, the door swung open, and the scream thundered once more before being silenced. A gentle hush settled, and the iron door slid shut behind them. The key's runes lost their glow, signaling its task complete. In the eerie calm that followed, Alina realized her heart no longer pounded with that unnameable dread. The weight of fear had lifted, but so had the memory of her mother's lullaby. A hollow space lingered in her mind, a silence where once had been warmth. Bram, Lissa, and Garrick approached, each bearing their own emptiness. Bram could no longer recall the feel of his brother's hand. Lissa could not remember the first word that kindled her love of knowledge. Garrick could not hear the forge's triumphant roar. Tears glistened in Alina's eyes. "We have saved ourselves," she said, voice trembling with grief and relief. "But at the price of the memories that made us." A hush fell over the group as they realized the full weight of their sacrifice. Determined to find a way to restore their lost memories, the companions returned to Windreach, consulting scholars, mystics, and finally old Mareth once more. The seer told them that while the key of silent fears could lock away terror, only the power of shared memory, stories told and retold, could rekindle lost recollections. Thus the four embarked upon the path of healing, gathering villagers to recount tales of Bram's brother, reciting Lissa's scholarly discoveries, and forging new songs about Garrick's first blade. And for Alina, the village mothers sang lullabies anew, weaving in echoes of her mother's melody. Slowly, flickers of memory returned. Bram felt the clasp of his brother's palm. Lissa remembered the thrill of discovery in ancient texts. Garrick sensed the forge's triumphant clang. And at last, as the first light of dawn bathed the city's spires in gold, Alina's heart hummed once more with a single, tender refrain, the soft, sweet notes of her mother's lullaby. With their memories restored but wiser to the key's power, the companions returned the key of silent fears to Rorick Ironhand, the blacksmith guardian of the Night Warden's legacy. He encased it in a glass reliquary within the city's hall, a testament to the courage it had inspired and the price it demanded. Alina, Bram, Lissa, and Garrick became emissaries of hope, traveling far and wide to share the lessons of the key, that fear, though powerful, is not invincible, that true courage lies in facing, and sometimes relinquishing, the darkest corners of one's heart, and that memories once shared have the power to heal even the deepest wounds. In Windreach and throughout the realm, the key's story endured, a sprawling epic of sacrifice, courage, in the enduring strength of the human spirit. And on quiet nights, when the wind stirred the embers of the forge and the moon cast pale light on the hall, it was whispered that if one listened closely, one could still hear the key's silent promise. In locking away your darkest fear, you may lose what you hold dear, yet by sharing memory's light, you'll find your path through night. Hallowmere was a settlement of thatched cottages and narrow lanes, hemmed in by wind-swept moors and stands of ancient trees. The road to the north, once the main artery for traders and wayfarers, had fallen into disuse, its name fading to shadow way in the telling. By day, farmers tended their fields and children chased crows beneath the sunlight. But as dusk fell, a hush descended over the village, and doors bolted with a quiet urgency. Windows lit from within shone like watchful eyes, and the townsfolk spoke in murmurs of shadows that would walk the road before their eyes. Isla Thorne, the miller's daughter, grew up on stories of the Shadowway. She had heard elders whisper that the wandering shadows were the echoes of past souls bound to the road by regrets unatoned and memories unvanished. Some believed the shadows sought to reclaim something lost. Others said they hunted the living, attempting to steal warmth for their cold existence. Isla's heart trembled at the thought, yet her curiosity burned brighter than her fear. She longed to uncover the truth of the road where shadows walked. One autumn evening, with the harvest moon full and swollen above the hills, Isla ventured alone toward the old windmill at the road's halfway point. She carried only a lantern and her grandmother's silver pendant, a token said to guard against dark enchantments. As the sun sank, the windmill's skeletal blades turned creakingly in the wind, their shadows stretching long across the cobbles. Isla paused, heart pounding, as the lantern's glow flickered. From the edge of the road, a figure emerged, tall, formless, its head dipping as if studying her. Panic urged her to turn back, but fascination held her in place. The figure drifted forward, its shape rippling like smoke. Then it spoke without words, a silent thrum in Isla's mind, a song of longing and regret. Trembling, she whispered, "Who are you?" The shadow halted, then bowed its head as though in sorrow. In that moment, Isla felt the weight of centuries of unspoken memories pressing against her soul. The shadow glided past her, across the road, and vanished into the night. Isla's lantern fell with a crash as she realized she had witnessed the first wandering spirit of the Shadowway, and survived to tell the tale. Shaken yet resolute, Isla sought out old Marwick, the village keeper of lore. In his cluttered study, stacks of parchments, weathered tomes, and bottled herbs, Isla described what she had seen. Marwick's gnarled hand traced stained pages in an ancient ledger. Long ago, he rasped, before Hallowmere was called Hallowmere, this was the King's Road, leading to the citadel of Ebenreek. When the realm fell in war, the dead marched this path one final time. Their regrets and grief were left to wander, bound to their shadows. He produced a brittle manuscript, its ink faded, which recounted how the shattered lives of soldiers, exiles, and fleeing families had anchored their shadows to the road. Isla pored over the records. She learned that whenever regret runs deep, the shadow can anchor itself to the living world, seeking resolution or, if there is none, drifting eternally. The manuscript warned that those who walk the road at twilight risked encountering these lost echoes, and might in turn feel their own shadows rippling free. Isla realized she had glimpsed only the beginning of the Shadowway's power. To understand more, Isla persuaded Marwick and 4 brave companions, Rowan the huntsman, Serene the herbalist, Tom the blacksmith's son, and Maris, a retired soldier scarred by her own nightmares, to accompany her along the road at dusk. Each carried a token of their past, a blade Rowan refused to sheath, Serene's mother's grief-worn shawl, Tom's broken hammer, and Maris's dented helmet. They hoped a ritual of binding, long fallen into disuse, might coax the shadows into revealing their nature. At the road's midpoint beneath an ancient oak, Marek began the incantation from the manuscript. They lit candles, chanting lines invoking memory and release. As the final words faded, a hush fell. The candles flickered and the wind stilled. Then they heard it. Slow, deliberate footfalls along the cobbles. One by one, shadow forms coalesced. Soldiers in spectral armor, a musician with a bowed head, a grieving mother reaching for a child unseen. Each figure lingered, eyes hollow, drawn to the flicker of candlelight. Serene laid the shawl at the base of the oak. Rowan sheathed his dagger. Tom tapped the hammer 3 times. Maris placed her helmet upon a nearby stone. The shadows paused, seeming to intone a silent thanks. Then, as if breathed out by the wind, they dissolved, vanishing into motes of silver mist. The group stood trembling, their tokens warmed by an unseen hand. Marek whispered, "Their regrets are eased, if only for a moment. But the road still hums with echoes." Fueled by their success, Isla and her companions resolved to venture further. Beyond the oak, past where the moonlight dimmed into darkness deeper than night itself. The road's cobbles gave way to chalky earth, and the trees arched overhead like silent sentinels. Here, their own shadows stirred at their feet, elongating, distorting, as though eager to detach. Each member felt a tug, a whisper of their own regrets. Serene's shawl, once a token of maternal sorrow, began to glow faintly, guiding them like a compass toward a distant glow. There, concealed by brambles, they discovered a ruin, the remnants of a gate etched with mourning faces and locks shaped like shattered hearts. Beyond it lay a clearing where mist lay thick, a place where shadows gathered in congregations, weaving stories in silent communion. In the clearing's heart stood a solitary figure, a massive stone obelisk carved with the names of the lost. Its surface shimmered with living shadow, and from its apex drifted a melody of soft lamentation. Isla realized this was the fulcrum, the nexus binding the past to the road. If they could still the obelisk's sorrow, perhaps the shadow way would lose its power, but at the risk of silencing the voices that sought remembrance. Rowan circled the obelisk, searching for a way to calm its sorrowful song. Maris, steeling her nerves, placed her helmet at its base. Tom hammered a protective rune, one of shielding, into the obelisk's foot. Serene arranged her shawl in a careful knot, while Isla stepped forward, her grandmother's silver pendant warm against her chest. She spoke aloud, a promise to carry the stories of these wandering souls into the light of day. As her words echoed, the obelisk's melody shifted, its sorrow transforming into a gentle hum of acceptance. The shadow clouds at its apex began to disperse, drifting back toward the road. The clearing seemed to exhale, and for a moment the world felt balanced. Past regrets soothed, present fears abated, and future hope brightened. Together, the party retraced their steps beneath a sky now flecked with early dawn light. As they emerged from the forest, they found the road less menacing, its shadows shorter, less insistent. The windmill at the valley's edge caught the morning sun, its blades turning with a gentle sigh. Villagers awoke to find the mist thinner, the air charged with an unspoken promise of renewal. In the days that followed, Hallowmere changed. The tavern, once hushed at dusk, now rang with stories of courage and remembrance. Children dared to walk the road at twilight, pressing their ears to listen for faint echoes of history rather than fearing for their safety. The windmill, too, took on new meaning. Its creaking blades now seemed to hum with the collective memory of a community that had learned to honor its past without being haunted by it. Isla returned to the village archives and, with Marek's guidance, compiled a tome, the Chronicle of Shadowway. In its pages, she recorded every detail of their journey, legends collected, rituals performed, the cleansing of the obelisk. She wove in personal reflections on regret, forgiveness, and the power of community to heal ancient wounds. The chronicle was inscribed with care, its cover bound in stitched leather and its pages edged with silver leaf to catch the light. When the first prints emerged, villagers pored over its contents. The chronicle became a treasured heirloom, passed from home to home, its wisdom guiding each generation in understanding that shadows, like memories, need not consume us. Instead, they can teach us empathy, resilience, and the importance of carrying stories forward. Years passed and the shadow way remained, still visible only in twilight's hush. Yet its fearsome reputation had softened. It was no longer solely a passage of dread, but a road of living memory, where villagers paused to honor their ancestors. On the anniversary of Isla's crossing, they laid wreaths of wildflowers along the road's edge and sang fragments of the songs once whispered by wandering shadows. The light of their lanterns flickered against the cobbles, a testament that love and remembrance could overcome the weight of regret. Isla, now recognized as a sagacious elder, often led small groups across the road at dusk. Students, travelers, and those seeking solace. She would place her hand on the weathered obelisk, recite a pledge of remembrance, and invite the participants to share a memory of someone they had lost. In the clearing, the air filled not with sorrow alone, but with the warmth of shared stories, the gentle hum of lives well loved, and the soft reassurance that none of us ever truly walks alone. On the eve of a golden harvest moon, as the valley basked in ethereal light, Ila sat beside the windmill, her hair silvered by time, but her spirit as vibrant as ever. She listened to the windmill's gentle creaks, the echoes of 1,000 memories carried on the breeze. Then as dusk deepened, she rose and made her way to the Shadowway start. Behind her, the villagers gathered, children with wide eyes, parents holding hands, elders offering knowing smiles. Together, they stepped onto the cobblestones. In the shimmering half-light, the shadows lengthened, and for a moment, each traveler felt a gentle tug at their heels, the familiar brush of an unseen companion. A hush fell, and a soft chorus rose, as if every wandering shadow across the centuries had joined their steps in solidarity. Ela slowed to a standstill, placing her hand upon a lantern passed from one generation to the next. She whispered, "Walk without fear, carry our memories with love." And so they moved forward, a living procession of hope across the road where shadows walk. Proof that while the past may wander endlessly, our present steps can guide it toward the light. Long after Isla's guiding lantern was extinguished, the Shadow Way endured as a symbol of transformative remembrance. Scholars visited to study its legends. Pilgrims came to tread its cobbles in respectful silence. Villagers continued the annual remembrance ritual beneath the harvest moon. The windmill, its blades still turning with that soft, eternal hum, remained the sentinel of memory. And on quiet, dusky nights, if one stands at the edge of the cobblestones and listens with a heart unburdened by fear, the whispers return, faint but distinct. Remember me. I was here. Carry our stories. For though shadows walk the road, it is the living who light its path, ensuring that no story, no life, no voice, however faint, ever truly fades into the night. Raven's Hollow was a village of ivy-clad cottages and cobblestone lanes, nestled in a deep basin where mist pooled like memory. The villagers kept a respectful distance from the old stone bridge at the valley's edge, for it was wrapped in countless tales of souls drawn across its unseen span. In the tavern's hearth-lit corner, wizened storytellers recounted the tale of Seraphine Valeris, a minstrel who had vanished in pursuit of her own lost song, and of Thane Gawain, a knight who sought redemption for a forgotten sin. Each story ended the same way, with a tolling bell, a flash of silver light, and the bridge's sudden disappearance. Though no one dared cross it, each passing generation felt its silent pull, an invitation to a world unseen. Mira Kalem was the daughter of the village chronicler, her spirit restless like a leaf caught in the wind. From childhood, she devoured every legend of the bridge, imagining the realm it concealed. On the eve of her 21st birthday, as moonlight poured down in narrow silver beams, Mira ventured alone to the bridge. Beneath a sky heavy with stars, she watched the mist swirl. Then, to her astonishment, the arches shimmered into view, more radiant than any marble spire. Heart thrumming, Mira stepped onto the first plank. The world blurred, the air crackled, and the valley dissolved behind her. When Mira's senses cleared, she stood upon soil that felt both firm and fluid beneath her feet. Before her stretched Aloria, a land shaped by memory and desire. Trees of crystalline leaves sang softly. Rivers flowed with liquid light. Towers rose like fingers of ivory carved by dreams. The sky was a tapestry of colors unseen in any mortal realm, and at the horizon, the bridge of unseen paths glowed like a lifeline back to home. Mira realized she had stepped into the realm of possibilities, a place where thoughts could shape reality and forgotten hopes took wing. Lost in wonder, Mira nearly missed the figure that approached. Edrin, the shifter. His form flickered between human and raven, his eyes twin pools of starlight. Edrin revealed that he was one of Iloria's wardens, tasked with guiding travelers whose hearts were true. He warned that Iloria was fading. The collective belief of both worlds sustained its magic, but shadows had begun to seep in, born of doubt and despair. If the bridge's bond to Raven's Hollow failed, Iloria would fall into oblivion. Mira, heart still racing, vowed to help save this realm she had only just discovered. Their first trial took them into the Forest of Echoes, where trees murmured the regrets of every traveler who'd ever lost their way. Mira and Edrin navigated paths that twisted upon themselves, guided only by the faint glow of phosphorescent moss. At the heart of the wood, they discovered the source, an ancient sentinel tree whose roots connected both worlds. Its bark was inscribed with runes of promise and penance. To strengthen Iloria, someone must offer a memory of deepest sorrow and transform it into a beacon of hope. Trembling, Mira touched the bark and recalled the pain of her mother's death, a sorrow she had long buried. Her tears fell like silver blossoms, and the bark blossomed with luminous flowers that pulsed with gentle warmth. The forest stilled, gratitude humming through the air as the path forward cleared. Beyond the forest lay the city of mirrored dreams, where every surface, tower walls, canal waters, and even the sky, reflected one's secret yearnings. Citizens here wore masks of glass, their true faces revealed only to those brave enough to confront their reflections. Mira's own reflection shimmered. She saw herself not as an apprentice chronicler, but as a bridge between worlds, a keeper of hope. In the city's Hall of Mirrors, Edrin and Mira deciphered an inscription foretelling that the bridge's power rested on 3 sacrifices of heart: sorrow, courage, and love. Empowered by her first sacrifice, Mira pressed onward, prepared to face the next trial. Their journey led to a vast desert of undulating dunes, where every grain of sand carried a forgotten secret. The wind here whispered the unspoken words of the lost: apologies too late, love unconfessed, and dreams abandoned. Travelers often lost themselves in the dunes, consumed by the weight of unvoiced regret. Edrin taught Mira to follow the wind's pattern, to sift the sands not with her eyes but with her heart. As they crossed, Mira found herself standing before a dune, carved into the shape of her own home, a reminder of the love she had withheld from her sister. With fierce resolve, she spoke aloud words of reconciliation she had once held back. The dune collapsed into golden dust, and a pillar of wind, bright as dawn, soared into the sky, her act of courage sealing the second sacrifice. At the edge of the desert stood the citadel of vanished shadows, an obsidian fortress where doubt reigned supreme. Shadows slithered along the stones, whispering that no sacrifice could ever overcome fate's inexorable course. Here Mira faced her greatest trial, to offer a sacrifice of love. She realized that her love for Aloria, though newly born, burned brighter than any fear. Standing before the fortress gates, she poured forth her devotion, love for her sister, for her village, and for the realm between worlds. The shadows recoiled as if scalded, and the obsidian walls cracked, revealing a crystalline path leading back to the windmill's clearing. As Mira and Edrin retraced their steps under the silvery glow of Aloria's twin moons, the realm itself seemed to awaken. Rivers gleamed with renewed vigor, forests hummed with eldritch vitality, the towering spires of distant cities shimmered as though freshly built. The bridge gleamed with a brilliance that transcended stone, an iridescent arc linking two realms of hope. In Raven's Hollow, the villagers felt a subtle shift, a collective inspiration, a quiet assurance that their shared stories mattered more than ever. At the windmill's base, Mira and Edrin stood side by side as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. The windmill's blades turned slowly, creaking with a melody that carried the whispers of both worlds. Edrin bowed his head in respect. "You have saved Aloria," he said, "and in doing so, you've reminded your realm that the past secrets are not curses, but gifts to guide us." Back in Raven's Hollow, Mira awoke beneath the windmill's shadow, her journal filled with luminous sketches and transcriptions of Aloria's whispers. Though some wondered if her tale was a dream, the villagers felt its truth in every breeze that rustled the old stones. Mira became a keeper of both lands, chronicling the forgotten songs of Aloria and teaching her people to listen for whispers of hope in every gust. The Bridge of Unseen Paths remained, a legendary span that shimmered only at twilight. But now, thanks to Mira's courage, it was known not as a harbinger of loss, but as a pathway to renewal. On mist-kissed evenings, the windmill creaked its gentle song, carrying secrets of the past that kindled dreams of the future. And wherever the breeze wandered, across silver mist waters, through Greymoor's orchards, and beyond the valley's edge, there echoed the promise that those who dare listen may glimpse a world unseen, a realm where memory and possibility intertwine in an eternal dance. Generations later, children in Raven's Hollow still gather at the windmill's foot, eyes bright with wonder, as the old blade creaks in the dawn hush. They press their ears to mossy stone and listen for the soft murmur of echoes, voices of long-vanished dreamers, ancient minstrels, and courageous hearts who once crossed the bridge into Aloria. In every whisper, they hear the same invitation: to remember, to believe, and to walk with open hearts into the unknown, for the greatest journeys begin on paths that lead to places unseen. In the little village of Nightridge, a settlement built upon the edge of vast forests and shrouded in perpetual twilight, lived a man named Adrian Blackwood. Adrian had grown up hearing the legend of the trail, from his grandmother's soft, trembling voice recounting a time when the night itself seemed alive with whispers, to the hushed conversations of the elders who warned that the path was not for the faint of heart. Despite their warnings, Adrian, driven by a restless yearning to understand the full spectrum of human emotion, felt an irresistible call. The idea that one might venture into darkness and return with a deeper understanding of life's hidden truths captivated him beyond measure. On the eve of his 25th birthday, under a sky heavy with the promise of a new mysterious journey, Adrian resolved to follow the call. With little more than a sturdy pair of boots, a tattered journal, and a lantern that flickered with a golden glow, he set forth into the dusky unknown, leaving behind the comforting familiarity of Nightridge in search of answers that lay hidden along the trail. Adrian's footsteps led him to the forest's edge where the air grew cooler and the first hints of dusk cloaked the land. The trail before him was barely discernible, a narrow dirt path overgrown with ferns and wildflowers that shivered in the gentle, sorrowful breeze. As he took his initial steps, he felt as though he were crossing a threshold into another world. a realm where every sound was muted and every shadow held meaning. The deeper he ventured, the more the natural world around him seemed to dissolve. The sun, now a mere ring of dim red on the horizon, handed over its dominion to an omnipresent gloom. The trees grew taller and denser, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that swallowed all but the faintest glimmers of light. In that moment, the trail began to reveal its curse. Scattered along its length were eerie apparitions of shadow, fleeting images of faces and figures that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Adrian couldn't tell if they were memories of those who had traversed the trail before him or projections of his own innermost fears. Regardless, each step further into the gloom tightened the grip of uncertainty around his heart. As night deepened, a silence fell over the trail, a silence punctuated only by the soft crunch of gravel underfoot and the slow, steady beat of his own heart. It was then that Adrian began to hear them, faint, indistinct whispers that seemed to rise from the very ground around him. At first, the voices were lost amid the rustling of leaves and the sighs of the wind, but gradually they became clearer, merging into a mournful chorus. The whispers spoke of ancient sorrows and of dreams abandoned in the wake of time. They murmured secrets of lives lost, of regrets that festered like shadows, and of unfulfilled aspirations that hovered at the edge of memory. Adrian felt as if the trail itself were alive, a sentient force that collected every tear and every sigh and wove them into its fabric. The voices were not hostile, yet their persistent lament stirred a chill within him, a reminder that the journey he had embarked upon was one of profound inner exploration, a confrontation with all that he had long suppressed. Despite his mounting dread, Adrian recorded every whisper in his journal. Each night, by the light of his lantern, he wrote down the fragments of voices he could comprehend, names, phrases, emotions that flooded over him like a tide. He began to suspect that the trail, through its whispers, was trying to communicate a deeper message, urging him to delve into the dark recesses of his own soul to confront buried truths. Several nights into his journey, as the darkness deepened and the whispering voices grew into a plaintive symphony, Adrian encountered something that froze his blood. In a clearing lit by the ghostly glow of the moon, he saw an apparition standing by a weathered stone pillar. The figure was indistinct at first, a blur of shifting black and silver, but as his eyes adjusted, a face emerged. It was the face of a young woman, her features serene yet etched with sorrow, as if she bore the weight of countless regrets. Her eyes, deep pools of unspoken longing, seemed to meet his, and for a moment, the very passage of time stilled. The apparition, whether a lingering spirit of the trail or a product of his own tormented imagination, spoke without words, its silent gaze conveying a sorrow that resonated with Adrian's inner darkness. He approached, heart pounding, desperate for understanding. As he drew nearer, the figure faded away like mist on the morning air, leaving behind only the echo of a gentle weep. The encounter shook Adrian to his core. It forced him to confront the possibility that the trail was not merely a physical path, but a conduit for memories and souls that had long been consigned to oblivion. In the little village of Nightridge, a settlement built upon the edge of vast forests and shrouded in perpetual twilight, lived a man named Adrian Blackwood. Adrian had grown up hearing the legend of the trail, from his grandmother's soft, trembling voice recounting a time when the night itself seemed alive with whispers, to the hushed conversations of the elders who warned that the path was not for the faint of heart. Despite their warnings, Adrian, driven by a restless yearning to understand the full spectrum of human emotion, felt an irresistible call. The idea that one might venture into darkness and return with a deeper understanding of life's hidden truths captivated him beyond measure. On the eve of his 25th birthday, under a sky heavy with the promise of a new mysterious journey, Adrian resolved to follow the call. With little more than a sturdy pair of boots, a tattered journal, and a lantern that flickered with a golden glow, he set forth into the dusky unknown, leaving behind the comforting familiarity of Nightridge, in search of answers that lay hidden along the trail. Adrian's footsteps led him to the forest's edge, where the air grew cooler, and the first hints of dusk cloaked the land. The trail before him was barely discernible, a narrow dirt path overgrown with ferns and wildflowers that shivered in the gentle, sorrowful breeze. As he took his initial steps, he felt as though he were crossing a threshold into another world, a realm where every sound was muted and every shadow held meaning. The deeper he ventured, the more the natural world around him seemed to dissolve. The sun, now a mere ring of dim red on the horizon, handed over its dominion to an omnipresent gloom. The trees grew taller and denser, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that swallowed all but the faintest glimmers of light. In that moment, the trail began to reveal its curse. Scattered along its length were eerie apparitions of shadow, fleeting images of faces and figures that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Adrian couldn't tell if they were memories of those who had traversed the trail before him or projections of his own innermost fears. Regardless, each step further into the gloom tightened the grip of uncertainty around his heart. As night deepened, a silence fell over the trail, a silence punctuated only by the soft crunch of gravel underfoot and the slow, steady beat of his own heart. It was then that Adrian began to hear them, faint, indistinct whispers that seemed to rise from the very ground around him. At first, the voices were lost amid the rustling of leaves and the sighs of the wind, but gradually they became clearer, merging into a mournful chorus. The whispers spoke of ancient sorrows and of dreams abandoned in the wake of time. They murmured secrets of lives lost, of regrets that festered like shadows, and of unfulfilled aspirations that hovered at the edge of memory. Adrian felt as if the trail itself were alive, a sentient force that collected every tear and every sigh and wove them into its fabric. The voices were not hostile, yet their persistent lament stirred a chill within him, a reminder that the journey he had embarked upon was one of profound inner exploration, a confrontation with all that he had long suppressed. Despite his mounting dread, Adrian recorded every whisper in his journal. Each night, by the light of his lantern, he wrote down the fragments of voices he could comprehend, names, phrases, emotions that flooded over him like a tide. He began to suspect that the trail, through its whispers, was trying to communicate a deeper message, urging him to delve into the dark recesses of his own soul, to confront buried truths. Several nights into his journey, as the darkness deepened and the whispering voices grew into a plaintive symphony, Adrian encountered something that froze his blood. In a clearing, lit by the ghostly glow of the moon, he saw an apparition standing by a weathered stone pillar. The figure was indistinct at first, a blur of shifting black and silver, but as his eyes adjusted, a face emerged. It was the face of a young woman, her features serene yet etched with sorrow, as if she bore the weight of countless regrets. Her eyes, deep pools of unspoken longing, seemed to meet his, and for a moment, the very passage of time stilled. The apparition, whether a lingering spirit of the trail or a product of his own tormented imagination, spoke without words, its silent gaze conveying a sorrow that resonated with Adrian's inner darkness. He approached, heart pounding, desperate for understanding. As he drew nearer, the figure faded away like mist on the morning air, leaving behind only the echo of a gentle weep. The encounter shook Adrian to his core. It forced him to confront the possibility that the trail was not merely a physical path, but a conduit for memories and souls that had long been consigned to oblivion. Thus, the saga of the trail that leads only to shadows endures, a sprawling epic of introspection, resilience, and the eternal quest to understand that even within the quiet gloom, there is a spark of unyielding possibility. Every step taken along this path, every memory confronted in the hush of twilight, contributes to the vast, unfinished tapestry of the human spirit, a journey where every shadow holds the secret promise of a new beginning. Long before Grayspire became a quiet, isolated village, nestled amidst towering evergreens and rocky cliffs, its lands had once teemed with life, commerce, and turbulent intrigue. According to time-worn oral histories passed down by firelight, the bell was originally cast during an age of turmoil and uncertainty by a master bell founder named Calum Duran. Legend has it that Calum, a man of keen perception and deep sorrow, forged the bell with metal from a fallen meteor and infused it with incantations gleaned from ancient, forbidden texts. His artistry was beyond mortal measure, and thus the bell came to possess an eerie aura, a capacity to sense and portend misfortune long before it descended upon the lands. The earliest accounts describe the bell tolling under a blood-red sunset, as if the heavens themselves wept for the sorrows it foretold. Over the centuries, as kingdoms crumbled and the tides of fortune shifted with the whims of fate, the bell's reputation grew. It became known by many names: a herald of doom, a bell of unquiet souls, and ultimately, the bell of destiny's echo. To the local folk, the bell served as a cosmic reminder that while joy could be fleeting, misfortune was an ever-present specter lurking at the edges of time. Grayspire, a modest settlement clinging to the foot of rugged, mist-covered mountains, had long learned to live with the bell's eerie toll. The villagers, a hardy and superstitious folk, built their lives around its ominous chime. In Grayspire's central square, the ancient bell tower stood as a silent sentinel, a reminder of the precarious balance between fortune and misfortune. Stories abounded of families spared disaster by heedful avoidance of ill-omened days, of lovers reunited amid sudden turns of fate spurred on by the bell's warning, and of farmers who managed to harvest their fields just before a devastating storm struck. Among the residents was a young man named Everett Sinclair, whose family had been both blessed and cursed by the bell's toll. Everett's mother, a gentle soul renowned for her kindness, always warned him, "When the bell tolls, listen well. It speaks in a language of fate that can guide you, but also warns you of the shadows to come." Growing up under the somber melody of the bell, Everett harbored both fear and fascination. He felt that the bell was not merely a harbinger of sorrow, but also an oracle, a mystical guide that, if he could understand its language, might enable him to change the course of impending misfortune. Thus began his lifelong quest to decipher the cryptic tolls and master the art of forewarning, driven by a desire to protect those he loved and to reshape destiny itself. One storm-laden autumn evening, as dark clouds loomed heavy over Grayspire and the wind carried a forlorn dirge, the bell began to toll, its sound deep, resonant, and laden with a sense of impending doom. Everett, who was then a young apprentice to the village clockmaker, listened from his workshop as the mournful chimes rolled across the valley like distant thunder. That night, the bell's toll was unlike any he had ever heard. It was as if each peal carried with it fragments of a prophecy. In the frigid air, the villagers spoke of ominous signs: livestock falling ill, crops withering prematurely, and a mysterious figure seen wandering the outskirts of the settlement. Everett, troubled by these ill omens, set out immediately to investigate. With a lantern in hand and his heart pounding like the bell's solemn drum, he traced the sound of the toll to various corners of the town. Along the winding paths and shadowed alleys, he found evidence of misfortune: a broken gate symbolizing fractured unity, a wilted bouquet left as an offering at an abandoned shrine, and cryptic symbols etched into ancient stones that he soon recognized from his studies of old prophecies. Everett's investigation culminated in a heart-stopping revelation when he discovered that the toll had coincided with the disappearance of a local child, a tragedy so profound it rattled the town's very soul. Though the connection was unclear, the event confirmed what the legends had long foretold. The bell always rang before misfortune struck. Determined to understand the true nature of the bell's ominous power, Everett sought the wisdom of two venerable figures in Grayspire: Professor Alistair Mortimer, a reclusive scholar whose extensive knowledge of ancient myth and symbolic lore was unrivaled, and Madame Celeste Duval, a seer whose visions of fate had guided many a desperate soul. In the quiet sanctuary of the town's dusty library, Professor Mortimer pored over time-worn manuscripts, deciphering archaic scripts that hinted at a primordial connection between the bell's chimes and the world's inherent cycle of creation and destruction. In parallel, Madame Duval welcomed Everett into her modest, candlelit studio, where the heavy scent of incense and the soft rustle of ancient tarot cards filled the space. With eyes that seemed to see beyond the veil of time, Celeste shared with him a vision, an overwhelming tapestry of images, flickering scenes of catastrophic storms, sudden separations of loved ones, and the anguished cry of nature herself as if mourning the loss of life. "The bell," she intoned in a voice both fragile and resolute, "is not merely a harbinger of ill fortune, it is a sentinel that marks the turning of fate's wheel. Every toll heralds both an ending and a beginning, a call to heed the balance of life." Her words, imbued with an almost sacred urgency, spurred Everett to dedicate his every waking hour to deciphering the intricate symbolism of the tolls. Together, the scholar and the seer collaborated, delving into ancient myths, comparing visions with historical events, and mapping out a pattern in the bell's unpredictable tolling. Their combined efforts painted a picture of inevitability. The bell was not random, but a preordained signal, a ritualistic marker that occurred when the natural world was about to undergo a significant upheaval. In the depths of the ancient library, amidst stacks of forgotten lore and brittle scrolls, Everett and Professor Mortimer unearthed a peculiar manuscript. The text, known simply as the Book of Prophecies, dated back centuries and contained a series of cryptic aphorisms, each paired with descriptions of disasters that had befallen the region over time. One passage read, "When the bell's sorrowful tone doth sound, the harvest of tears shall soon abound. A shadow will pass, and grief will unfurl, marking the doom of both heart and world." This poetic verse both chilled and fascinated Everett. The manuscript detailed events that seemed too precise to be mere coincidence: natural disasters, epidemics, and personal tragedies whose timing echoed the bell's toll. The more he studied the manuscript, the more Everett began to perceive the bell not as a curse, but as a tragic reminder of the fragile balance between fortune and sorrow, between joy and inevitable decay. Inspired by his findings, Everett began to document every toll, every corresponding event, and every minor or great misfortune that struck Grayspire. His meticulous records, combined with the observations of Madame Duval, gradually formed a chilling correlation. When the bell tolled, misfortune was never far behind. Yet hidden within the despair was a subtle hint, a glimmer of hope that if one understood these ominous signals, one might be able to deflect them, or at least prepare for their occurrence. As winter crept over Grayspire with biting winds and frosted streets, the bell's tolling became more frequent and ominous. One particularly frigid night, after the bell had sung its mournful dirge for what seemed like the 100th time in a single night, a series of disasters struck. A raging blizzard descended unexpectedly, trapping families in their homes. A fragile bridge on the outskirts of the village collapsed under the sudden weight of ice and snow, and a mysterious illness claimed the lives of several vulnerable townsfolk. In the aftermath, grief and fear coiled through the streets like a living thing, and the villagers, terrified and bewildered, rallied in the hope of understanding and averting further calamity. Everett's records, now considered vital, were read aloud in community meetings. With the guidance of Professor Mortimer and the prophetic insights of Madame Duval, he urged the people to heed the bell's somber warning. "The bell tolls not to condemn us," he would say, his voice both earnest and resolute, "but to remind us that fate has its rhythms. We must listen, learn, and prepare. In our unity, there is strength to weather any storm." A sense of cautious determination began to spread through Grayspire. Under the banner of collective resilience, neighbors began sharing resources, fortifying their homes, and preparing for future misfortune. It was as if the very act of facing the bell's prophecy together imbued them with a reluctant hope, a belief that understanding the future might empower them to shape it. In the wake of the calamities, Everett, Madame Duval, and a dedicated team of volunteers initiated a series of initiatives aimed at protecting the community. They organized emergency workshops where practical survival skills were taught alongside sessions on meditation and stoic reflection. People learned to interpret small changes in nature, a falling leaf, an unusual shift in the wind, as potential portents of the bell's next toll. The villagers, once paralyzed by fear, found solace in the shared sense of purpose that emerged from their collective efforts. Amid these turbulent times, Everett experienced a profound personal trial. Late one stormy night, when the winds outside howled like the tormented souls of a forgotten past, he found himself alone at the ancient bell tower. With only the bitter whisper of the storm for company, he confronted the source of his own fears, the relentless, echoing toll of the bell. In that solitary moment of crisis, amidst the tempest's wrath, Everett realized that the power to endure lay not in escaping fate, but in embracing it with courage. Surrounded by the elements, with rain pelting his face and the cacophony of the storm deafening his thoughts, he pledged to dedicate his life to the service of his people, to continue chronicling the bell's prophetic tolls, and to champion the resilience of the human spirit, no matter how dire the omen. With the town banding together in the face of perpetual misfortune, a new chapter began to unfold in Grayspire. Everett's compendium of toll records and historical calamities grew into an invaluable guide, a book of community resilience that synthesized ancient prophecies with modern preparedness. Families gathered in the town hall, poring over charts that correlated the bell's toll with various natural and human-induced events, seeking patterns that might enable them to foresee impending disasters. Under the careful tutelage of Professor Mortimer, the villagers learned that while the future was indeed uncertain, knowledge was a powerful tool. They held workshops on predictive analytics and even conducted small experiments with weather instruments, while Madame Duval offered her intuitive guidance. The collaborative spirit infused new hope into Grayspire, with each citizen believing that even if misfortune was foretold, it could be met with preparedness and grace. Everett's work, entitled Echoes of Doom and Hope, became more than a record. It was a chronicle of survival, interwoven with the poetry of life and the stubborn resilience of a community that refused to be defined by despair. The book was shared far and wide, its pages a testament to the strength born of unity in the face of inevitable adversity. In time, as the seasons turned and the disasters of that dark winter began to recede into memory, the people of Grayspire discovered something remarkable. The bell, though it continued to toll in ominous tones, began to carry with it not solely a warning of despair, but also the subtle promise of renewal. New growth emerged in the charred landscapes of past disasters. The once tragic events forged a bond that united the community, inspiring innovative approaches to safeguard their homes and hearts. Families rebuilt, schools adapted, and the town, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. Everett, now recognized as the voice of Grayspire's resilience, continued his work with a tempered hope. The tolling of the bell was a reminder of the fragility of life, but also an affirmation of their collective ability to face the future. In his later writings, he spoke of the bell as both a curse and a blessing, a dual-edged instrument that, while ominously foretelling misfortune, also spurred the community to act, to come together, and to forge a future in which preparedness and compassion reigned. Art and literature flourished in Grayspire during these years. Local poets composed verses about the beauty of enduring hope in the face of inevitable loss. Painters captured the dramatic interplay of shadow and light as seen in the twilight hours when the bell tolled. Musicians wrote symphonic pieces that echoed the deep rhythms of the village's heartbeat. The town, once defined solely by its sorrows, became a beacon of communal strength and innovation, proving that even when fate seems to speak only of doom, there is always room for hope and renewal. Decades later, the legend of the bell that tolls before misfortune strikes had become inseparable from Grayspire's identity. The ancient bell tower stood as a solemn monument at the town's heart, a relic that, through its eerie prophecies, had woven generations together in the struggle to understand and overcome the caprices of fate. Everett, now an elder with a quiet wisdom etched into every line of his face, often sat by the tower on calm, reflective evenings, listening to the distant, resonant tolls that carried the echoes of both past calamities and the unyielding hope that had sustained the community. In one final act of reflection, he penned a meditation titled The Song of Fate and Renewal, in which he mused, "We are bound by the twin threads of destiny and courage. In every toll a warning, in every shadow the echo of hope, for though misfortune may knock upon our door, it is the strength of our hearts that determines what will be built anew." As he shared his final thoughts with the gathered townsfolk at a memorial service for those lost in past tragedies, a profound hush fell over the assembly. In that moment, the bell tolled one last time, a deep, sonorous chime that seemed to signify not an end, but a perpetual cycle of remembrance, unity, and rebirth. The people of Grayspire, united by their shared journey, vowed to honor the lessons of the past while embracing an uncertain but brighter future. Long after Everett's final words had faded from the world, the legacy of Grayspire and its fateful bell endured. The bell tower, a steadfast guardian against the passage of time, continued to call out its solemn warnings, guiding subsequent generations as both a reminder and an inspiration. The pages of echoes of doom and hope remained in circulation, a cherished relic of a time when fate spoke in solemn tones, and a community rose to meet it with unwavering resolve. In quiet moments, when the wind carries the soft murmur of memories, even children and newcomers to Grayspire swear they can feel the intangible pulse of the bell, a heartbeat of destiny that unites all who call this resilient town home. For in every toll, there lingers a spark of human perseverance, an eternal promise that though misfortune may come, the indomitable spirit of hope and community will always prevail. Thus, the story of the bell that tolls before misfortune strikes stands as an epic narrative, a testament to the intertwined nature of fate and human fortitude, sorrow and renewal, and the unbreakable bond that unites a community in its darkest hours, guiding them ever onward toward a future filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings. In the small village of Eversong, nestled at the edge of a vast forest and crisscrossed by the meandering Silver Mist River, the legend of the riverbank had been passed down for generations. Villagers spoke of the bank's uncanny property. At dusk, when the sun dipped low and the sky blushed with the hues of farewell, the flowing waters would catch the echoes of forgotten songs. It was said that long ago, when the village was a flourishing center of trade and art, Bards and musicians would gather at the river's edge, their instruments resonating in harmony with the natural world. Over time, as memories blurred and dreams were set adrift, those ancient songs became whispers carried by the wind. Young Nora, an aspiring musician with an inextinguishable curiosity and a yearning to unearth lost beauty, was entranced by these stories. Since childhood, she had spent countless afternoons by the silver mist, listening to the gentle ripple of the water and imagining that somewhere within its ceaseless flow lay the remnants of forgotten ballads. Her grandmother used to say, "The river remembers, child. It sings for those who listen with their heart." Nora's life would soon become a quest to explore these legends and reclaim the music of the past. One crisp autumn evening, when the leaves fell like soft embers from ancient trees and the sky wore a rich tapestry of crimson and gold, Nora ventured to the riverbank with her old beloved violin tucked under her arm. As twilight merged with the approaching night, the world around her seemed to hush in reverence. Sitting on a smooth, time-worn stone, she closed her eyes and listened. At first, there was only the gentle lapping of water and the rustle of wind through the reeds. Then gradually a faint melody arose, so soft it could have been the sigh of the river itself, a sound that felt both melancholy and wondrous. It was as if unseen voices had taken up the strings of the wind, weaving a lullaby of sorrow and forgotten hope. Awed and overcome with emotion, Nora began to play along. Her violin's notes danced tentatively with the ambient tune, and as they mingled in the air, a profound calm washed over her. In that instant, she understood that the riverbank was not merely a place of natural beauty, but a repository of memories, where the songs of generations past lived on. She vowed then that she would capture these echoes, preserve them, and let them guide her in discovering the hidden histories of her village. In the weeks following that transcendent night, Nora's search for the truth behind the river's forgotten songs deepened into an obsession. She spent her days in the Eversong Village Archive, a small room filled with yellowed manuscripts, brittle scrolls, and faded portraits of long-gone ancestors. There she discovered references to an era when the villagers celebrated music as the very essence of life. Dusty records describe festivals where bards competed in lyrical contests on the riverbank under a moonlit sky, their voices carrying the collective joys and sorrows of the community. One brittle, handwritten note mentioned a melody of the ages that was believed to be lost when the river's course shifted centuries ago. Encouraged by these leads, Nora began to piece together the fragments of the past. She interviewed the oldest residents of Eversong, whose eyes shone with nostalgic recollections. They spoke of a time when the river echoed with the songs of beloved minstrels, when every note was a story of love, triumph, and tragedy. These stories, rich with personal loss and communal celebration, wove a tapestry of emotion that transcended time. Nora's own heart swelled with both grief and hope at the thought of retrieving those sacred memories and reviving the lost lore of her people. One particularly serene night, when the veil of twilight was at its deepest and the air shimmered with ethereal calm, Nora returned to the riverbank determined to record the elusive melody. Under the gentle glow of a crescent moon, armed with her violin, a portable recorder, and a deep sense of anticipation, she settled beside the water. As the minutes ticked by, the familiar lull of the river gave way to a crescendo of whispered tunes. In the subtle interplay of natural sounds and ghostly harmonies, Nora captured a symphony of forgotten emotions. The soft notes of lost love, the bittersweet strains of unmet dreams, and the silent ode to a collective past that had been reclaimed by the passage of time. As she played, the music seemed to shift with her own feelings. At times the melody danced with joyful brightness, while at other moments it sank into a profound sorrow that mirrored the ancient grief of the land. Nora's heart wavered between rapture and despair, but in that delicate balance, she felt an inexplicable unity with the generations that had come before. Her recorder captured the raw, unadulterated sound of the night, a living archive of the riverbank's whispered songs. Upon returning to the village, Nora shared her recordings with her mentor, an elderly musician named Maestro Salvatore, whose life had been steeped in both the art and the mystery of music. Salvatore, eyes glistening with reminiscence and respect, listened intently as the haunting notes filled his modest study. After a long, reflective silence, he revealed a long-forgotten manuscript passed down through his family, a lyrical compendium believed to have been penned by one of the greatest minstrels of Eversong's golden age. The manuscript, written in flowing, elegant script and adorned with musical notations, described the Song of the River, a legendary melody said to hold the power to heal broken hearts and unite lost souls. Salvatore explained that the manuscript had been separated into fragments over the years, its verses scattered like petals in the wind. The echoes captured on Nora's recorder bore a striking resemblance to some of the long-lost lines. With these revelations, they surmised that the river itself had somehow preserved the melody, a living memory of the town's ancient spirit. Together, they embarked on a quest to reconstruct the complete song, piecing together clues from the manuscript, local legends, and the captured recordings. Their collaboration blossomed into nightly sessions of shared creativity and introspection, as they sought not only to revive a forgotten tune, but also to understand its deeper, transformative significance. News of the rediscovered melody spread slowly among the villagers, sparking a renewed interest in the old traditions of Eversong. Recognizing the power of communal memory, Nora, Maestro Salvatore, and a group of inspired townsfolk decided to organize the Ritual of Remembrance, a celebration to honor the legacy of the river's forgotten songs. On the eve of the summer solstice, when the long daylight yielded to a mystic twilight, the community gathered at the riverbank. Under a sky blushed with the colors of departure and promise, lanterns were hung from ancient trees, and the air was filled with the soft murmur of prayers and whispered wishes. Families, young lovers, and those burdened by loss took their places in a circle around a makeshift stage, where instruments both old and new awaited their moment. At the stroke of midnight, the ritual began. With delicate gestures, each participant recited verses from the recovered manuscript, and Maestro Salvatore strummed his lute in perfect harmony. Nora, standing at the center with her violin, began to play the reconstructed melody, the Song of the River, a tune that seemed to draw from the very depths of the past. As the notes unfurled into the night, something remarkable occurred. The river, as if awakened by the chorus of human voices and the tender strains of music, shimmered with an otherworldly light. The gentle murmur of the current joined the harmonious refrains, and the entire scene took on a transcendent beauty, a living symphony of remembrance that bound the community together in shared hope and healing. For that enchanted moment, every heart in Eversong beat in unison with the timeless music of the river, and every forgotten dream was given new life in the gentle embrace of sound and memory. In the months that followed the ritual of remembrance, the effects of the revived melody rippled throughout Eversong. The riverbank, once a solitary place of whispered secrets, became a gathering ground for dreamers, artists, and those in search of solace. New festivals were organized, and the community embraced its past with a fervor that bridged the gap between bygone eras and the present. Paintings were created that depicted the luminous interplay of water, light, and shadow. Sculptures captured the ephemeral nature of sound, and poets penned verses that celebrated the eternal dance of remembrance. Nora's recordings of the river's song became treasured relics, broadcast over local radio, and shared at community events. People discovered that the melody carried with it a subtle, transformative power, a reminder that while our memories may fade with the passing of time, the beauty of our collective experiences endures. The song was more than music. It was a vessel of healing, capable of mending hearts fractured by the relentless march of time. It whispered of hope and offered a bridge between generations, a reminder that even in the quiet sorrow of loss, there is a beauty to be found. Inspired by the resurgence of ancient music, Nora and Maestro Salvatore began to delve deeper into the scholarly studies of Eversong's history. With the help of Professor Edmund Calloway, an expert in local lore and musical antiquities, they embarked on a rigorous research project. Archival documents, old family recordings, and even folklore from neighboring villages were unearthed and studied in painstaking detail. Together, they theorized that the river's echoes were not accidental. They were the manifestation of a long-held belief among the earliest inhabitants that the river was a living record of every joy and sorrow experienced along its banks. Their research culminated in the publication of a comprehensive volume titled Melodies of Memory, the Living Song of Eversong, which meticulously documented the history of the forgotten songs, the evolution of the ancient melody, and its profound impact on the village's cultural identity. The book was celebrated not only as a groundbreaking work in musical antiquity, but also as a moving tribute to the enduring power of collective memory. It inspired other communities to explore their own ties to tradition and to cherish the ephemeral beauty of their shared histories. For many individuals, the rediscovered melody proved to be a catalyst for personal transformation. Among those whose lives were deeply touched was a woman named Lydia Hart, who had long suffered from the weight of unresolved grief following the loss of her husband. When Lydia first heard the Song of the River during one of the community gatherings, something within her stirred, a long dormant hope that perhaps her own story of sorrow could be rewritten. Over subsequent nights, Lydia embraced the melody, letting its gentle cadence wash over her heart. In the shimmering reflection of the river, she found the strength to confront her past and to begin the slow, painful process of healing. Soon her quiet tears turned to smiles, and she emerged as an emblem of resilience, a living testament to the transformative power of embracing one's memories, both bright and dark. Lydia's journey resonated with others, and soon more villagers began to share their experiences of personal healing inspired by the song. The riverbank became a communal sanctuary, a place where the act of listening to the whispered echoes of the past was not an admission of defeat, but a declaration of hope. In the collective warmth of shared vulnerability, the people of Eversong discovered that the bridges between what was lost and what could be reborn are built with every note, every memory, and every quiet act of remembrance. Years later, as the vibrant spirit of Eversong continued to flourish, the legacy of the riverbank and its forgotten songs became a cornerstone of the community's identity. The annual Festival of Remembrance had grown into a grand celebration of life, bridging the gap between past and future through art, music, and shared reflection. The riverbank itself was preserved as a sacred landmark, a place where every evening at dusk, when the whispers grew louder and the light softened into a golden haze, individuals from all walks of life gathered to remember, to dream, and to connect with something greater than themselves. Nora's recordings, the scholarly works of Professor Calloway and Maestro Salvatore, and the heartfelt accounts of those transformed by the song all converged to form a tapestry of cultural heritage that was as intricate as it was enduring. Over time, the melodies of memory not only echoed along the river's edge, but also became a source of inspiration for future generations. Poets, musicians, scholars, and dreamers who saw in the whispered songs the promise that even the faded notes of the past can spark a new dawn. In the quiet twilight of a setting sun, as the river flowed on with its timeless murmur, the people of Eversong would pause and listen, a silent communion with the echoes of forgotten songs that spoke of love, loss, hope, and the eternal dance of memory. Long after the initial spark of rediscovery had illuminated the hearts of those in Eversong, the legend of the riverbank where whispers grow louder at dusk endured like a timeless lullaby. Visitors from distant lands now journey to witness the spectral beauty of the river, to stand upon its banks and listen, and to feel the gentle pulse of history mingled with dreams yet to be realized. In every ripple, in every sigh of the wind through the tall grasses, the forgotten songs of the past resound, a soft, melancholy chorus that promises renewal, connection, and the unyielding power of memory. Thus the story of the riverbank that echoes forgotten songs lives on, a sprawling epic of personal transformation, communal healing, and the delicate interplay of light, sound, and memory. It stands as a tribute to the idea that even the quietest whispers of the past hold the power to inspire us, to guide us through the corridors of time, and to remind us that in every note there lies the eternal promise of a new beginning.